to you and ask you, same question in regards to if you'd like to highlight a specific program that you're seeing an agency work on, perhaps you're working with them or multi-agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a few good examples, but I think there's, I might highlight one from a people perspective and one from a technology perspective. I think, and I, you know, as we were just chatting on the break here, I've gotten really passionate around this people side of zero trust, because
Sure.
I think in many respects it is, you know, the people and the cultural changes that have to occur are almost the bigger barriers than the technological barriers to implementing a zero trust roadmap. And we have seen that play out in real time. So we have executed hundreds of workshops. We have dedicated programs with a variety of clients, but there's one I have in mind in particular that we've run an entire sort of end-to-end program across their top leadership. And then when we think of zero trust in the pillars, the folks that own the applications, that own the data, that own the networks, et cetera, right? And going deep into each of those areas. And one of the things that we've been able to achieve there was through the facilitation workshops and other activities, bringing the mission/business side of the house together on defining what those priorities, objectives, and the roadmap would begin to look like. That lack of alignment is very often the misstep in the past. Zero trust is so widespread, so wide-reaching. The touch from an end user perspective, the fact that users are the front line, and that education aspect, that knowledge aspect, and the level of having to take some of that out of their hands, the level of automation and frictionless, you know, level of how the technology is implemented is fundamental to making sure we achieve the business objectives. Zero trust is also massive. And so where do you start? It's one of the most common questions. How do we get started? Well, aligning with the business priorities. And so literally in this one program, you know, we've run I had 25, 26 different of these types of forcing functions. And some of them were quite painful. Some of them were really painful, getting the security team and the business team together. But without that, the progress could not be made. And now it's shifted to a more aligned approach, changes in their governance, changes in role definitions. They didn't have RACI across the organizations in terms of who picked up what in the event of a breach. As we've been discussing, breach is just assumed at this point. So there's a lot of focus on resilient and recover and what do you do when it happens. There's a lack of governance and process in place to really do that effectively, especially unless they've already been put through a fire, which kind of has forced some organizations to get that more in place than what they had before. So I've seen a real positive impact of, you know, getting that alignment. And that is one of the best practices. That is one of the things that we advocate. That is one of the things. We had another agency where we were about to engage in a zero trust workshop, and that CISO said, you know, hey, I want to do one for the business side and I want to do one for the security side. And we said, yeah, that's not the goal. The goal is get everyone into the common conversation, everyone in the room together. And so that the people side of it, I think, is really fundamental to make sure you are focusing on not just the technology side, which is the natural disposition of most security organizations. On the technology side, I'll say, you know, we've looked at, you know, generally speaking, 4 broad use cases that zero trust implementations are really falling under. And one of the ones that really shot to the top was around remote workforce. And so projects around networking, projects around microsegmentation, projects around SASE are some of the leading starting points that we've seen where some things like identity were a little bit more mature and in place. And we started to see this focus on the networking, and especially because of the hybrid work model that everyone was forced into, but definitely within the federal government as well. I'm starting to see some of those technologies coming into play and starting to see an uptake in some of those areas as well.